The Toronto Blue Jays picked up a massive win over the Tampa Bay Rays, and this one, from the outlook, looked real tough because Tyler Glasnow was on the bump, and the Blue Jays managed to scratch a couple of runs against them and ultimately won 6-2. So a huge opening game series win against the Tampa Bay Rays. So we'll break that down on this episode of Jays Digest, as well as the Brandon Belt injury update. We got more on that front, so stay tuned for what's coming up next. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And what a win. I mean, that was just fun. That's what good baseball is like. Just a 6-2 win against a great opponent. And obviously it was stressful at the beginning, Nick. I mean, we couldn't get any hits or any traffic on the base pass against Tyler Glasnow, but the Jays ultimately got 4 runs in that big inning over there. They took him out of the game early, only 5 1/3 innings pitched for Tyler Glasnow, and just a massive result. I mean, they needed this on all fronts. The Seattle Mariners are currently losing right now, so the Jays control their own destiny. They have their own destiny in their own hands here. And if they can take care of business, if they can win another 4 more games, they're basically a lock to make the playoffs. And it's looking like they're going to go ahead and do that. They just got to take care of business, got to keep it going.
Yeah, this was a huge win for the Jays on many fronts. Like you said, this is obviously the day that the Mariners and the Rangers are in their big battle, and playing any game with the Trop is very difficult. So we're going to break that down, and a huge belt update, which kind of changes everything for the Jays going forward if you can come back. But before we do that, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 8,300. And Peter, let's get into the game a little bit here now, and hope you guys are tuning in on this late Friday, late uploads. If you like those, make sure to hit the like button. But Peter, a very, very solid game overall for the Jays. And like you said, it looked very, very grim at the start. And George Springer and Bo Bichette did their job. Vladdy, honestly, I'm very happy with how he played today. Coming back from that injury, he got 2 walks. Glasnow wanted no piece of him. And, the story of the show tonight was Dalton Varsho with the huge moonshot home run in the 8th, I believe, or the top of the 9th. And then, obviously, his big 1-run single. That would have been a 2-run if it was anyone but Alejandro Kirk running. But phenomenal job battling against Tyler Glasnow. And there's one thing that the Blue Jays have done well the entire season. It's been taking their walks and it's been their plate discipline. The power hasn't been there. The RBIs and runners in scoring position hasn't been there, but they've always took their walks. And against, elite pitching, it works out sometimes, and it worked out today against Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you're going to have to do. I mean, you're going to have to scratch a couple of runs. We've been waiting for this Jays team to turn it around and to implement that power that we know that they have. They've shown it in the past. It just hasn't been there this year for whatever reason. You can talk about their approach all they want, but look, this is what they are right now. There's 8 games left in the season as we speak at the time of this recording. They're not going to suddenly hit 5-6 home runs a game. They're not going to become the Atlanta Braves. It's just not going to happen. So you got to find ways to scratch a couple of runs together, and that's what they did today, and it was just great to see it.
Yeah, and, overall, like you said, there's not many games left. So against the Rays, obviously this was the first game of the series, so it's a huge win, but it felt completely like a playoff game to me. And again, looking at the stats here, I was going into the game, I don't know what I was expecting. Tyler Glasnow, we have Chris Bassett, who's obviously been phenomenal, but the fact that, Dalton Varsho, Whit Merrifield, even Santiago Espinal, who a guy in our pregame show on the live stream, we were kind of, saying, why is he in the lineup? On a day where the pitching really was able to step up, and Chris Bassett, he battled, he got 8 strikeouts, which is something that Chris Bassett doesn't usually do. And the big thing today is that, again, it felt like a literal playoff, wild card game or ALDS game, in the sense that it was 2 aces battling, which is going to happen in the playoffs. And it's the first team to really break out for a big hit or a big, run. And ultimately the Jays got that by taking their walks, and Varsho obviously was the one who stepped up, which is really important to see, especially given his struggles the entire year. But I don't know, it felt like a complete playoff game to me, playoff atmosphere. It's the Trop, battle of the pitchers, and the Jays, honestly, they gave me some hope going forward with this win. This was the biggest and most impressive win that I've seen out of them in weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was probably the biggest game of the year. And if you fast forward a couple of weeks now, that we might have the same exact matchup. We might have Tyler Glasnow on the mound. Obviously, it'll be against Kevin Gausman if it isn't a wild card playoff series. You would hope so, at least. That would be another John Schneider mess up that we would have to talk about. But it would probably be Tyler Glasnow on the mound for the Tampa Bay Rays in the opener of that series. And they proved today that they can get a couple of base runners on. You're obviously not going to fire off 8 to 10 runs against him because he's one of the elite arms that the MLB has to offer. But if you can get some traffic on the base paths, if you can use one of your biggest strengths, which is their speed on the base pass, then you might get lucky. You might scratch a couple of runs together. And this was a playoff game. You hit the nail on the head there, Nick. I mean, this was a playoff atmosphere. They're going to play the Rays 5 more times before the season's end. And when the playoffs start, I mean, it's very possible that we see the Rays yet again, especially if one team gets swept or if the Rangers and the Mariners split their series. So, yeah, you're going to have to know how to beat these guys. I think they're very beatable. You just got to find ways to go ahead and play clean baseball for 9 innings.
Yeah, and quick, I looked at him briefly there, but to shout out a couple of the pitchers, Jordan Hicks is a guy that he really should have finished, now this was obviously before the game ended. Romano ended up going 1 inning and not giving up a run, but Hicks should have been able to, get better out of his defense there. Matt Chapman had the weird, kind of, I don't even know how to describe that, where he fell off and wasn't able to tag Margot at second base. But this was a game, and let's not forget here that the Tampa Bay Rays absolutely have something to prove and something to play for, because, and ultimately they're going for the division. And Kevin Cash was, chirping the umpires a little bit. Ron Culpa at first base. So it's not like they're wrapping up their season. They're fully going for first in the division against the Orioles. And the Orioles, actively right now are winning their game. I think they're going to go ahead to win, and I'm sure they were aware of that, and they're going all out. And maybe that could be beneficial to us going forward if the Orioles manage to clinch their playoff berth and clinch their spot in the division. We might be able to have some weak, competition going forward. But any quick final thoughts on that before we move on to the Brennan Belt update and wrap up this video?
Yeah, I mean, the Orioles are going to go ahead and win today, and the Rays are going to be 2.5 games back. So they basically got to win out if they want any chance of going ahead and catching the Baltimore Orioles. So they do absolutely have something to play for, because if you look at the left side of the bracket there, the wild card bracket, I'm sure the Rays want no part of any wild card team. They want that first round bye, and they want home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Even though I don't know it'll help much. There's probably 18,000 people there at Tropicana Field today, but that's not the point. They want to be at home. They want to get that first round bye, give those pitchers some extra days of rest. So absolutely they're going to try to win. And you could tell that they were visibly frustrated today. And it's not like the Jays played a Rays team that went ahead and rolled over. This was a team that absolutely had something to play for and was going all out today. And the Jays were just better on this day, and I truly wasn't expecting it. I mean, the Jays haven't really come up with the big wins this year like they've needed to, and today was as big of a game as they've played all season, and they managed to go out there and be the best team on the field. They made a couple of mental errors, but overall, it was just a clean 9 innings of baseball. Chris Bassett was phenomenal. Jordan Hicks looked nasty out of that bullpen. And Jordan Romano got out of that bases loaded jam there, and then he wrapped it up in the ninth inning. It was just great on all fronts. And the timely hitting was a nice sight to see.
Yeah, they proved me wrong, and maybe that if they can continue playing, complete games like this, which is something that again they haven't really done so far throughout, the season. They haven't really had a big, they had big wins, but this was a really staple win tonight. And one quick thing before we do wrap up, which could change, a lot going forward. This is Brandon Belt was here with the Blue Jays and hitting off the machine. Schneider says they're exploring options to get him facing live pitching, and having the complex nearby could be one. Sounds like he's close if today goes well, and we obviously don't know how it went yet. We might get some more knowledge on that tomorrow on Saturday. September 23rd there. But Peter, if Brandon Belt comes back into this lineup, the only worry is if, last time he came back, he was looking a little bit rusty, and we know from, not getting a lot of spring training at bats and starting the season that if he's rusty, he is not the same Brandon Belt that we really need with the 800 plus OPS or 850 OPS. But maybe he can come back and give us 750 OPS or even 825 OPS, something like that. But I don't know. Any quick thoughts on this? I want to see him back, but ideally with a few games of practice in before the playoffs. You can't just throw him out in a playoff game. I think you got to give it to Kevin Biggio the way he's been playing. Shout out to him. He's being unbelievable.
Yeah, you can't throw him out there. And the game that he did come back, he did not look like himself. And I wouldn't even attribute that to rust. I think he was still hurt.
Yeah.
You could tell that he wasn't following through like he usually does on his swings. And his back was hurting him. And then ultimately he went on the IL. I think the Jays rushed him back just out of necessity because they need that 850 OPS in that lineup. They need it desperately. And as much as I love Kevin Biggio, as much as I love the way that he's been playing as of late, I don't think he's a guy that you want hitting cleanup for you in a playoff series either. So they do need Brandon Belt back. That would be a massive addition. But like you said, only if you can get a couple of at-bats under his belt before the playoffs were to start, because I don't just want to force him in there. That would be throwing him into the deep end, and I don't think he's quite ready for that yet. So let's hope Keegan Matheson is on the ball there. Let's hope that he was right on that update, and that if today did go well for Brandon Belt, that maybe we might see him in there for the Yankees series with a chance to lock up that playoff spot for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, and hopefully the Jays, and with the win tomorrow, winning the series, they're in a very, very good spot. And realistically, they're in a good spot regardless, because the only disastrous outcome of this series would have been getting swept because of the way the schedule lines up. We already avoided that. But hopefully they can go ahead and win the game tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching this late night upload, or whenever you're watching. It means a lot. And we'll have an upload for you guys tomorrow afternoon. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.